Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everybody, to another Maker Monday interview with Go Imagine. My name is John Lincoln. You might have seen a few of our Maker interviews before this, but if you haven't, and this is your first time joining us, I want to thank you for being here. You probably already know that Go Imagine is launching fully this summer, and we are now the world's first marketplace to be donating 100% of profits to charitable organizations focusing on childhood homelessness and hunger. But we started a little while ago these Monday interviews because we really wanted to highlight for everybody what makes Go Imagine cook. The reality is our marketplace does not exist if we don't have makers to help us. And over the past few months, we've been fortunate enough to have hundreds and hundreds of makers joining our team and helping promote the idea of the new caring economy and how we can really do some good in the world if buyers and sellers come together on our marketplace. So with that said, I'm very excited about our special guest today. Let me introduce you all to Terri Herzfeld from Sand & Sea Custom Signs. Hello, Terri.
Everybody. Hi.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here. I know you are lucky to be down in Florida, correct?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, maybe not lucky right now considering the pandemic, but
yeah,
in
normal
times, lucky.
Lucky in the winter.
Yeah. In fact, I didn't ask this before. How close are you to Tampa Bay?
That's about 4 hours. That's on the West Coast.
4 hours? Okay,
yeah.
I didn't realize till we just picked this up that I'm in Boston, Massachusetts, and Tom Brady has gone to Florida, and I was going to have to end this interview soon if I found out you were too close to Tampa Bay. But let's get started, Terri. I mean, I'm going to ask you the same question I usually start off with when I talk to everybody, but tell me about what got you into getting into handmade selling online. Is this something you've always wanted to do, or what actually bring us through your journey of what actually ended up getting you to the point of wanting to sell online?
Well, I've been an artist, I would say, most of my life. My mom is an artist. She became an art teacher after college, and then she had me, and I was kind of her student for the whole time I lived at home, basically. And she taught me a lot. I learned a lot from her. And when I got into high school, I realized I wanted to do something with that art and turn it into some type of a career. And when it came time to look at art schools, I wanted to go away from home, someplace warm. So I went to the Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale. And that's kind of where my career started. And I worked in different agencies, in-house art departments, publishing companies, marketing companies, nonprofits. And the last job I had was for a nonprofit. And through that situation, I wound up adopting my daughter and realized I needed to be a stay-at-home mom, and stayed home and did some freelance for them as well as other clients, and built a little side business to bring in some extra money while I was staying at home. And over time, I realized that I wanted to do something a little bit more fun, a little bit more creative. My sister's also very artsy, and she started getting involved with creating signs using this thing called the Cricut, which you can purchase at any art and craft type store. And she started using one, and she said, "You got to try this. You would have fun with this thing." So I did. I bought it, and we started making signs, and I started making signs as gifts, made them for myself. They're hanging all over my house.
I imagine, yeah.
And in every room. And but the more I did them, the more I enjoyed them. And I had people asking for them. I was giving a lot as gifts, and then they would recommend, "Oh, so-and-so could use this one, and this one's someone's favorite Bible verse. Could you put this on a sign?" And, living in South Florida, everything in my house is very beachy and tropical. So I started doing a lot of the tropical beachy signs, and those are also in my house everywhere. And then I realized, people are buying these, and I started creating I created a Facebook page and an Instagram page specifically for the signs. And it was still under my freelance business name. And I had a lot of people interested and contacting me through that. And one thing led to another, and I decided to make an actual logo, and it became its own business. So it's legally a business, and created those pages separately for them. And that's kind of where it started.
It's funny. You hear it off most people. It's oftentimes a one thing led to another, and before you know it, you're in business for yourself, selling things, right?
Right.
You said your mother was an artist when you were younger. Was she a painter as well? Was she more into graphics, or did she do other things in terms of art?
She's a fine artist. She paints and sculpts, and she does pretty much everything else. She's not into graphic design at all, actually. So
okay, all right.
yeah.
Is she still with us? Is she going to be watching this interview?
No, she doesn't do Facebook or any kind of technology.
Well, I was going to say hello to her. You can show her this anyway. But she's
Okay. Well, I will tell her.
Art on. So that's funny though, because obviously you grew up in a family that has some art background. You know, you said your sister has
Right.
it, and you actually went to art school. You know, some makers we talk with, it's more of a, you know, they learn on the go, they learn from themselves, they're kind of self-taught. But in your case, you've actually had some formal education on
Right.
art as well. Tell me about that experience when you went through art school. You know, there's so many different, you know, ways to express yourself with art. What brought you to making signs? Well, what was about the signs you think that drew you in more than, I don't know, making jewelry or doing clothing or anything else? What was it, the signs that really got you into doing that?
I think it was more just working with my hands, just doing
Mhm.
something. You know, when I started out in the industry, everything was done by hand. We didn't, I mean, again, I'm going to date myself here, but we didn't have computers. Desktop publishing was non-existent. There was no such thing. So everything was done by hand. You had to hand illustrate, hand do fonts, your typeface. You had to lay everything out by hand. So over time, that slowly shifted. And by the 90s, everything went to the computer platform, and Adobe, or not Adobe, Adobe wasn't out yet, but all of the other programs that started out the industry. And that kind of took away from doing things by hand because it all became done by the computer, basically. And now it's, you know, you can find anything you want online. So you don't even have to create anything half the time. You can just grab it, throw it somewhere, and you're good to go. So everybody could be a designer at this point.
Well, yeah, well,
when all is said and done.
You know,
know,
there's definitely tools out there that make it easier to do it, I believe.
Right. Right.
But now what you do with those tools to be creative, I think, is the key to that. And one of the things about your shop, and I want to show it real quick. So if anybody here listening wants to check out Terri's stuff, you can check her out on Go Imagine at Sand and Sea Custom Signs. And one thing that you were just mentioning is the fact that, you know, graphic design you were into, but you also like working with your hands and you paint, and then also there's even physical elements that go on with your signs. And that's what I wanted to talk about here, because it seems like between your graphic design side of you know, artistry, where you've actually done your professional jobs, I'll call it, and then your more hobbyist side of actually wanting to paint and use your hands, have kind of melded together in making these signs. Is that a good way to think of it?
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is. Because I know there's, you know, when you go to the store and you buy a sign, which signs are pretty much everywhere, any store you go into, any home goods store, you can buy any kind of sign with any saying on it, any quote on it. They're mass produced, and they're just, you know, they're just not the same. So when I started doing some of these signs, like the one you pulled up, I wanted it to look like a gradient with the ocean and the sand and the waves, and have the wood showing through a little bit, so it gives it some more texture, and then adding the seashells. So yeah, that part of it is definitely what makes it fun for me.
Yeah,
not just one color on top of one color and you're done.
Well, of course, yeah, because you mentioned using the Cricut, which is a tool I know a lot of artists like to use now. It's easy for kind of stenciling and graphic design.
Right.
But outside of that stenciling, you have to hand paint. And correct me if I'm wrong, but each of these signs you hand paint, and then you hand place the shells as well, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And now I have to ask you, being in Florida, and I assume being near a beach, do you actually use set shells that you find, or are these ones you were always purchasing?
It's a combination of both. It started off with ones that I found, and then as I've gotten more orders to make more signs, I've started purchasing shells so that I have enough in stock. But yeah, I kind of mix and match. A lot of the smaller ones are ones that I've found, because we have a ton of those on our beaches. The little small white one there. That one is that's a found one.
That's a found one. Yeah, no, do you feel a little more special when it's something you also found from the ocean that goes on?
Yes. When I have to go into my glass jars that are all over my house and pull out a shell from one of the ones I found, it's a good feeling.
Right. Yeah, I imagine it is, because I mean, talk about handmade. You're finding the item, you're painting it, you're doing the graphic design. I mean, you're doing everything, but I'm guessing make the canvas you're painting on, right? Unless you do that too. Maybe you actually somehow
No,
stitch a canvas together. But I'm
just a
guessing.
piece of wood. I did
Um,
have to learn how to saw wood. That was a learning curve for me.
Wait, so you actually some of these is that a canvas? I don't even know. Do you saw this? Is that how you create this wood?
It's a piece of wood. I buy wood, large sheets of wood, and then in my garage I take it, cut it to the size I want.
Oh, no kidding. I for
Hand
some
it
reason I
down.
thought it was a piece of canvas that was on like,
Oh, no,
wow.
it's
Okay.
wood. A piece of
All
wood.
right. That's pretty cool. Why did you just choose wood over another type of I guess painting device?
I think
Is
it's
the
just sturdy. It makes it a little bit more rustic,
Yeah.
more
Okay.
beachy.
Yeah. You love the beach. Now you said you moved down to Fort Lauderdale for school. Where were you from originally?
I'm from New Jersey originally, and we had a house. We had a house in Long Beach Island,
All
so we
right.
spent my summers down at the Jersey Shore.
Gotcha. And that's so you like you are I don't want to insult it, but I assume the beaches where you are now are maybe a little bit nicer. Is that maybe
I don't know
more
if they're nicer. I really miss the Jersey Shore, not the summer Jersey Shore, but off season when there's not a million people on the beach. It's a beautiful, there's some beautiful beaches there. So,
okay.
Yeah, I miss that. But yeah, we have beautiful beaches here.
And you've been a beach
Definitely.
person your whole
Can't
life.
complain. Yeah, I was a towhead Coppertone kid.
Very tan, but very blonde hair.
Yes.
So custom signs. I did want to talk to you about this. I mean, Sand and Sea custom signs, not just Sand and Sea signs, Sand and Sea custom signs, right? Which I have to assume that means that you'll do custom work as well, and people will make requests to you. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
All right. So how would someone approach you? I mean, does someone just come to the website and just naturally do it, or is that something you promote a lot on Facebook or Instagram that you'll take custom orders and make whatever they want, make their dream come true?
Most of the custom signs I've gotten orders for are through social media.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them just through family, friends, and again, word of mouth. On my page, if you click on any one of my items, one of my images says that I welcome custom orders. So every item that you click on, if someone sees something they might like, but maybe want something a little different, you'll be able to message me or email me. And
yeah, that's great.
Custom.
And so then they can really design it. Now, I think we talked about this earlier, but does some of these signs that people come up with for custom signs, you then realize it's a really good idea, and you kind of say, well, maybe I'll make this for everybody and start placing it on the website?
Sometimes it depends on the sign and the design. I mean, a lot of the signs I do as well are personalized. So those you can't really put someone's personalized artwork up there, but there's some custom designs that have personalization where you can put someone's name. One of my popular signs right now is the man cave sign, which a lot of people did for Father's Day. And you could put the person's name and the established date. And that was kind of a big hit for Father's Day.
Yeah, I could see it being, I think you had one over here at some point. You've got a lot of them on here. So for the Father's Day, yeah. So for seasonality, do you plan on, well, actually, I didn't even ask this question yet, which is good for everybody to know. We're talking about, obviously, your abilities here, but how long have you had your shop now?
My Go Imagine shop since March.
Since March, but how long have you been selling online?
Since February.
Since February, right? Because we talked about this earlier, and I was actually very surprised when we first talked to learn that you've only been doing this for 5 or 6 months online, and before that, you were selling just friends and family. You were saying, or were you selling a lot before you actually went on to the online world?
Basically, just friends and family. Wouldn't say I sold a lot. I sold quite a few, just through word of mouth and through Instagram and Facebook, but. Yeah, that's kind of what prompted me to sell online, because I figured if people are interested in the product, I might want to put it out there and see if someone else would be interested in the product.
Well, yeah. I mean, and I'm sure a lot of handmade makers get that, where people say, you should put this online. Why are you not selling this? People would pay for this. Like,
right, exactly.
People wouldn't pay for this. Like, yeah, they would. You do it, and before you know it, you're making money, and
right.
You're buying more.
I was surprised. I was very pleasantly surprised. But
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that's great. Outside of online, and I know it's tough in the economic climate we're in right now, but have you thought about also selling more in physical locations, maybe at small shops around you, or going to craft fairs? Is that a direction you think you're going to head, or are you going to stay just mostly online?
Right now, online. In Florida, we have a season where there's arts and craft festivals pretty much every weekend. During the summer, there's really nothing going on for that, but I would love to be able to get into a small one of those festivals. There's a lot of high-end pieces, so it's really hard to make sure you're in the right category, the right festival, because some of them are just way out of my league, and
Right.
I don't want to show up there with my little signs and there's people selling thousands of dollars worth of really nice artwork. So it's just finding the right avenue to do that. But yeah, there's plenty of places to do that, especially down here. And there's tons of little beachy shops that sell pretty much similar things to mine, a lot of tourist type stuff. So I would love to, maybe this summer I might start walking door to door and see if I can get into some of those places and just kind of get my stuff out there on consignment and see if anything sells that way. But I'd like to do that moving forward. I don't really have inventory, so I'd have to make a lot of inventory to do that.
Well, that's where the hustle comes in, right?
Yeah.
First off, I'll tell you, you're not giving yourself enough credit. I think your artwork's amazing, but I do understand the fact that there is.
Well, you know what I'm talking like these big paintings,
Yeah. Big paintings are thousands of dollars versus, a nice smaller painting you can hang up in your bathroom or something. There's
right. Okay, I get what you mean.
But different price points and different types of art. I totally understand that. Let me ask you this. And I asked this to another person before in one of these interviews, but one of the things I've come to realize is that when makers get into selling online or selling their art, selling their passion, really, they also have to do things that I don't want to say aren't the fun things, but you're becoming a business. You're not just an artist. It's not like you get to paint all day and somebody else handles the business, right? You've got to figure out the marketing side. You have to figure out, as you said, literally the hustle. If you want to sell at local shops, you might have to go door knock and talk to someone and see if they want to sell it, right?
Right.
I think that you said before, this is the first time of you having a business. Was there any shell shock? What was the experience like that you didn't expect, that it wasn't just selling your art, but you had to set up a business to do so?
Well, from the sign perspective, for me, the hardest thing is just getting everything all together, making sure I have all the supplies that I need, not knowing how many sign orders are going to come in, not knowing what signs are going to come in. And I have 70 something signs up. So it's like, I have to have everything ready to go as soon as somebody places an order, regardless of what the sign is. I've got to get the right size wood, the right color paint, all of my little shells and starfish and vinyl. And it was easier when it was just a few signs here and there. But now that I'm getting orders on a regular basis, I've got to really hustle that way too, making sure I've got everything. And the part that's really not my favorite is the shipping aspect of it, shipping and handling.
Yeah.
That's not fun at all. Packaging up everything, making sure that it's secure, and making sure that my starfish don't fall off in the mail, bubble wrapping the heck out of everything and packaging it so that it gets to where it's supposed to get to in one piece. That's very time consuming.
Cost of goods sold, because all of a sudden now you're looking at not just an item, but the package for the bubble wrap you got to buy, the box you have to buy, the shipping you have to buy. And all things go into it that the customer, the buyer, doesn't think about. But for you, there's a lot that goes into it other than just the painting.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yep. Which I imagine can be a challenge. So what advice would you give if someone was starting out? I know you've only been doing it 6 months, and that's actually why I'm liking talking to you, because I've talked to sellers who've been doing it for 10 years. What advice would you give a brand new seller who said, I'm thinking about doing it, not sure if I should? What do you think? What would you tell someone who's thinking about starting handmade items?
I would say pretty much just stick to what you know. Do what you love to do. Take your time setting up your shop. Make sure you're not just trying to throw things in there just to get stuff up there. That can be, it's overwhelming as it is trying to set up a shop anywhere. But just find your niche, take your time, and just make sure you're happy doing what you're doing, because if you do get busy, you better love it.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I mean, but that's actually part of the challenge, when people always say, do what you love. Well, everyone loves doing things, a little bit, but when it becomes your job and you're
Yeah,
doing it all day long, well, maybe it's not. And when you're painting things that maybe aren't for you or what other people want, they're not necessarily what you wanted. I imagine that part of the job aspect comes into it as well. It's not just only what you
right.
want to do anymore, right?
And for
So,
custom signs, when you're making things, they don't always go according to plan. Sometimes the vinyl rips and the paint bleeds, and there's always something that happens or goes wrong. And then those are the, oh my gosh, I got to redo this moments. And you
like,
just
I'll get a
spent
glass of
2 days.
wine tomorrow morning, kind of a situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, do you, and I'm just curious, do you take into account um, defects into your cost of goods sold, saying that, there, every once in a while you're going to rip some vinyl or you're going to ruin something that you have to factor in the fact that that's lost money, right? Do you factor that in at all at this stage of your business? Or are you still newer that you're just trying to kind of cover your costs and keep it moving?
Well, this one, since I've been doing them at least for myself and for friends and family as gifts, I wasn't really factoring in cost at that point, but knowing that there's always going to be something, and especially in Florida with the humidity and the everything's just different. Paint doesn't always
Mhm.
work right, so I know ahead of time that I might have a problem with with making any given sign at any given day. So I do try to factor it in, but at the same time, I'm just kind of going with it.
Right,
You
right,
take
right,
one
right.
sign at a time. That's all I can do.
Ain't one at a time. Well, maybe not in the future. What are your plans? As you grow and you start selling more and doing more, do you have a specific goal in mind that you're trying to achieve as you grow your business? Like, what is your dream scenario if you projected 3 or 5 years out? Where would Sand and Sea Custom Designs be?
I would love to have my own type of a studio, somewhere where I can do everything. Right now, I'm working out of multiple rooms in my house. The garage is where I cut everything. I usually do most of the design work up here. I paint sometimes in the kitchen. I stain outside. So I'm kind of all over the house. I'd love to have one location where I could do everything and get busy enough to where I could maybe have some people helping, you
Right,
know,
right.
hire someone to do the stuff that I don't like to do so much.
It's funny because
Cutting the
someone else
wood
did
and the
the same thing
shipping.
where someone who could do the shipping, someone who could come in, do the
Yeah,
packaging, create the
exactly.
labels, like just
Right.
get it out.
I
It's
just
a
want
little
to
bit of a
design.
yeah, oh yeah. It's a little bit of, if you were a chef that owned a restaurant, you might eventually hire a dishwasher, right?
Right.
Because you want to be the one doing the cooking, and that's perfectly fine. That's the beauty is that's all about being the entrepreneur, right?
Right.
You're creating your own business, but then you get to choose what you want to do in your business, and eventually who you might want to get help from on the things, quite frankly, you don't want to do. Um, what I want to do here though is I want to shift gears a little bit. I invited you, Terri, to
Okay.
talk with you because I really admire your shop. I'll be honest, my wife bought one of your signs; she thought it was fantastic. And then earlier today, we got talking and asked you a lot of the typical questions. But then, as we were talking, the conversation veered a little bit more into the personal side as well. And I learned something about you earlier that I admire, and it's something I want to take a moment to talk about. And you mentioned it earlier that before you actually started your own business, you were doing graphic design for a nonprofit charity, correct?
Yes.
And what was that charity's name again?
Food for the poor.
Food for the Poor. You're right. And I did look them up, and I'm sure as a lot of people know here already. Let me bring this up. Um, Go Imagine is focused specifically on a similar cause of donating all of our profits to homeless and hungry children, and trying to help the poor of the world with where our funds are going. And as we talked about what you've done, um, can you talk to us? Because I don't want to tell your story. Can you talk to everyone about not just your experience working for Food for the Poor, but how that led you to actually adopting your daughter from Nicaragua? Can you talk to us through that story?
Yeah, I can try to give you the Reader's Digest version of that.
I might want the whole War and Peace. I think it's a great story. But go ahead.
I, when I started at Food for the Poor, it was actually 2001, right before 9/11, and I had always been in corporate America, working in different aspects in those different industries there, and I really wanted to get out of that and get into something where I was doing a little bit good for somebody else. I was tired of making everybody else rich, and I mean, graphic design is graphic design, but at the end of the day, I wanted to feel good about what I was doing. And an opportunity came up at Food for the Poor. They were looking for a graphic designer, and I started there, and it was a little shell shock at first because I'd never worked for a nonprofit, and it definitely is a totally different animal. It's not like anything I'd experienced before. But as I slowly got to know the ins and outs of direct mail and how to do fundraising and how to design specifically for that, and working closely with the research team, they're the ones that go out into the field to get the stories. So they travel into Nicaragua, Haiti, Jamaica, all the different third world countries that Food for the Poor serves in. They would come back with stories and photographs that would just blow us all away. And I had never seen that kind of, those type of photos. I mean, you see that stuff on TV and on some, the sponsorship type infomercials, but this was something that I was seeing every day, and just the starving children and the people that were living under corrugated metal, and it took a while to get used to seeing that every single day. But I keep losing you. The organization started a sponsorship program for different orphanages that are located throughout these countries. And basically you sponsor a child for $34 and they get basic needs. And most of these kids are in not so much orphanages, they're more like protective homes, Nicaragua being one of those countries. That's where my daughter's from. But I was asked to design the logo and all of the printed materials for this specific program that they were just starting in 2001, 2002. And it was a huge project, and I was kind of having burnout from it. And I was like, okay, my boss said, why don't you go out into the field with the researchers, the writer and the photographer, and go and see what you're doing this for.
And so when you say into the field, he said, I want to send you to Nicaragua, essentially.
Yeah. Well, first they sent me to Haiti.
Okay.
And then so that was my first experience traveling outside of the country in that regard, as far as going to a place like that and just going to the different places that Food for the Poor did work. So we would go to feeding centers and orphanages and hospitals and education type areas where they were trying to build schools. And so I got to see all of that. And then a year later, I went to Nicaragua. And we came to a home where they had just come into the program. We were setting them up. And the project coordinator, who's the person who was in charge of each different country, it was me, a writer, a photographer, and the project coordinator. We went into this home. There were only about 5 girls in the home at the time. And, everybody else was doing their job. I was just kind of in the background checking things out. And one of the girls came up to me. She was probably about 10 at the time. And we just kind of connected. Now, she couldn't speak Spanish, or she couldn't speak English. I couldn't speak Spanish, but we really connected. And she was like attached to me, and I was taking pictures, and she was like enthralled with the camera. And we just kind of developed a little relationship, and I became her sponsor. Okay. So over the course of a year, her and I kept in touch through Food for the Poor's program. I was able to send packages and little gifts to her because of where I worked. I was able to do things extra that other sponsors maybe couldn't do. But so I was able to do that. And I went back a year later. She had her first Holy Communion and had invited me to come. And Food for the Poor was going to cover it because it became this big, huge party, and people donated dresses and all the little First Holy Communion tchotchkes to the home so that these girls could have a real celebration. Okay. And I think we had Catholic Digest actually came and interviewed and filmed it. And it turned out to be this whole big thing. And while I was there, I got to meet another girl who became my sponsor child's best friend. And at that point, my husband and I were talking, like the whole year leading up to that, we were thinking about adopting anyway. And we had talked about it. And when I got to Nicaragua, I remember calling my husband and I said, so what do you think about adopting 2 girls? I already had one in mind, but now I'm like, oh, guess what? There's 2.
So what was his initial reaction when you said that? Was it silence, or did he have something to say at that point?
No, I think he said, oh, okay. I don't think he knew what to say. But when I came home from that trip, that's officially when I started the adoption process. And then almost a year later, we went back to Nicaragua. I took my husband with me so that he could meet the 2 girls. and we could bring we have to fill out a dossier that was about this thick of all of our, our life on paper, basically.
Right.
Brought that back to Nicaragua with us to meet with, drop it off at the government office. And my husband met the two girls, and obviously he just fell in love with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where it started. And over time, about 3 years in, my daughter came into the home. She was much younger. She was about 4 when she was brought into the home. The home was run by a group of nuns, Catholic nuns. It was a Catholic run orphanage, and we had become very, very friendly and very close to the nuns. And again, we didn't speak Spanish, so we always had a translator with us. And the nun kept telling us, "You need to adopt this one. You can adopt her." So she kind of knew that our daughter was going to be declared abandoned, because that's basically what has to happen before they're available for adoption. And so sure enough, we waited it out, and into about 3.5 years in, we were told by the government that the other two girls were not going to be declared abandoned ever.
Wow.
They had family members that would not release their rights, even though they didn't want anything to do with them. They were not available for adoption.
And that's where it pulls at the heartstrings, where political red tape gets in the way of what you might feel is doing right. Right. I couldn't even imagine going through that experience for you, and how to even comprehend that situation, right? Where there's a family that doesn't want them, but doesn't want you to have them either. Right.
Right. That's pretty much what it was.
Yeah. Which is unfortunate, but ultimately you also found your current daughter. And what is your daughter's name?
Her name's Andrea.
Andrea. Okay, great. And so you ended up adopting her, and it was when she was 8 years old? Did I get that right, if I'm doing my math?
Yep, she was 8 years old, and we had moved there and lived there for 3 months to foster her.
Okay.
And then brought her home in 2011.
And so she is now how old?
She's 17.
17.
She'll be 18 in October.
So what grade is she in right now?
She's going into her senior year in high school.
Senior year in high school. Can you believe that?
No.
Oh my gosh. Think about the daughter you adopted from Nicaragua who's about to be graduating high school. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Listen, I can tell you, I could talk to you all night about this. I think you're a saint for doing what you've done. Not only, for working with Food for the Poor, but then also going to Nicaragua and realizing you could really help another person. And I hope Andrea is watching this, because I got to tell you, Andrea, you've got a fantastic mom. Who also is a very good artist at the same time. But ultimately, I appreciate you sharing this story. I know the purpose of this for Maker Monday is to really get to know you as an artist, to get to know you from your store standpoint. But I also want, as we meet our makers, to know who they are as people. And you've got an interesting story. And being a charitable marketplace, I love hearing that we have charitable makers, right? Because that's what this is all about. That's why we exist. So is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we wrap up, Terri?
I don't think so.
Okay. I'm still working on my own style.
Do you have any other questions?
But to wrap things up, I do want to say is that you have your own domain now called sandandseacustomsigns.com. Is that correct?
Correct.
So if anybody here is interested in Terri's work here, check her out at sandandseacustomsigns.com, or go to Go Imagine It. You can also Google her. Go Imagine her, Google her in Go Imagine to find her shop. As you can see, she does wonderful things. Terri, I thank you so much for joining me today to learn a little bit about you, and I'm sure I will see you online soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.